A fire crackles, not in a hearth, not in celebration, but beneath a man. A man tied to a gridiron, skin blistering, flesh searing, and yet he smiles, not out of madness, not out of mercy, but out of rebellion. His name was Lawrence of Rome, and the empire tried to burn him into silence. Instead, they made him immortal. This is not just a story of faith. This is a story of fire, and a man who turned agony into a final act of defiance. 3rd century. Rome, a city of marble gods and iron fists. The poor starved in shadows, while emperors bathed in wine and gold. Christians were no longer hidden, they were hunted. Faith had become treason, charity a crime, and mercy a sentence to death. The empire didn't fear swords, it feared souls it couldn't own. And Lawrence was about to become the soul they feared most.
Lawrence wasn't born into power. He was born into ashes. But through grit, wit, and a fire for justice he rose. Not as a warrior, but as Rome's archdeacon, keeper of the church's treasures. But his real treasure wasn't gold, it was the people. The blind, the sick, the orphans.
To mock the emperor was to invite torment, but Lawrence didn't tremble. He smiled, not out of arrogance, but out of truth. He had shown Rome what it feared most: a kingdom without coins and a power it couldn't burn. Just fury. The emperor's men seized Lawrence. Chains dug into his wrists, torches lit not for lights but for punishment. They built a device not seen in courts but kitchens. A gridiron, iron bars forged for cooking flesh. They would not crucify him. They would not behead him. They would roast him alive. Not just to kill, but to make a warning out of his pain. Night fell. Laurence was stripped, bound, and thrown onto the gridiron. Beneath him, flames, controlled, fed, measured, so he would not die quickly, so the heat would crawl across his skin, inch by inch. Witnesses would later say they heard nothing but the crackle of fire and the breathing of a man who would not scream. The flames rose, the stench of burning flesh filled the square, and still Laurence did not beg. He prayed, he whispered, he smiled. As the fire seared through him, a soldier stepped forward. He had seen enough. Too much. But before the man could speak, Laurence opened his eyes and said, through blistered lips, "Turn me over. I'm done on this side." Laughter. Gasps. Even the guards recoiled. In a moment where pain should have consumed him, Laurence made a joke, a final act of rebellion. Not with a sword, but with a smile. The crowd fell silent, because in that moment they weren't watching a man die, they were watching him win. When morning came, the fire had died down, but Laurence had not. His body, blackened and blistered, was still there. Arms stretched, eyes closed, a faint smile frozen on his face. The guards did not touch him. The onlookers did not cheer. They stood in stunned silence, as if holiness had passed through flame and refused to burn. That night whispers spread like smoke. They roasted him, and he joked. Was he even human? No monument was raised, no statues were carved. But something had changed in Rome. In the taverns, in the markets, in the shadows, Laurence's smile lingered. It haunted the executioners and ignited the hearts of the oppressed. The empire that mocked Laurence collapsed, but his name, it burned brighter. Churches were named after him. Paintings tried to capture his final grin. Stories turned into sermons, sermons into legends. But no one could agree. Was it bravery? Madness? Divine grace? All they knew was this: he was roasted alive, and he smiled. Even now, centuries later, his story survives. Not because he killed armies, not because he ruled nations, but because he defied death with humor. Because when the world gave him flames, he gave back laughter. Because he reminded us that fear only wins if you let it. And in a world ruled by cruelty, Saint Laurence became the only kind of king that mattered. Unburnable, unbreakable, unforgettable. Some fight with swords, others with silence, but a rare few fight with a smile. Laurence stood before the most brutal empire in the world, not with armies, but with defiance wrapped in humor. He was given pain and gave back peace. He was sentenced to fire that left behind light. Beat. His ashes are gone, his body burned, but the legend still warm. Pause. This was Laurence, the martyr who laughed at death, the saint who turned execution into poetry. And now you know why they say he was roasted alive and he smiled. End final beat. Fade to black.